All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Walking with Messiah Jesus. It is week 75 of our class. And for us, it's been an 8-week break. For everybody who's listening online, it's just the very next class. But I think I'm going to have to give us a little bit of a lead in here, a little bit of some runway before we can hit the skies again. But we got some great stuff with parables tonight, and maybe we get to see Jesus in a storm. So let's have a prayer and we'll dive in. Blessed Lord, you have caused all holy scriptures to be written for our learning. Grant that we may so hear them, read, mark, learn, and inwardly digest them, that by patience and comfort of your holy word, we may embrace and ever hold fast the blessed hope of everlasting life. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Okay. So we've been in Matthew chapter 13, and we've been spending time with these parables of Jesus. And the parables of Jesus are kind of some of the quintessential kinds of teachings where when we think of Jesus, we'll think of him teaching in parables. We talked a little bit about the purpose of these parables, that they are there to reveal, but if you don't have eyes to see, ears to hear, it's not going to get through. All right. And so he tells his disciples, you're blessed because you have the ears to hear, you have the eyes to see. And the whole idea there is that they have the blessing of being able to receive these things in faith. If you don't have faith, these are just funny stories that don't mean anything. But if you have the faith, they're the kind of stories that we hang on to and we glom onto. And we'll talk a little bit more about the purpose of that. But kind of getting us back a little bit in Matthew 13 and kind of where we've been with the parables. Jesus is sitting by the sea. We're in Capernaum here, and we have the parable of the sower. This is the famous parable of Jesus, the gardener scattering the seeds, and it's going to fall in different kinds of soil. And the purpose of that is to say, this is what you're supposed to do. You've got the word, and you're supposed to get it out there. And that's going to fall in all sorts of different places, and you don't even know what's going to happen because it's God who makes it grow, and you don't have even control over what kind of soil it lands on. All right, and so you have this parable, and really that's what it's there for. And sometimes with these parables, we try to do too much with them and make them do too much. And some of these, especially some of the ones we're going to hit today, they're there to make a single point. But what happens too is you string a bunch of parables together and you get a picture that comes. So these are pictures of the kingdom that we have. So one of the pictures of the kingdom is that the participants in the kingdom have God's word to spread and to sow in all these different places. And we're just kind of liberal about where it goes, and it's going to do its thing. And this is one of the parables that Jesus interprets for us. So we kind of know that's what it's all about. We then get the parable of the weeds, the tares, as we called them. And this is one to tell us, as you're growing, you're going to have weeds alongside you. And the purpose is not necessarily to weed out the weeds. That's something God will do. And God will do that at the end. Okay. He's going to do the sorting. And we've got a parable that's very similar to this today. He's going to be doing the sorting. But there's also a very important message in this also to say, you're not going to have the purity of the kingdom that you're looking for right away. This is going to be messy before it's clean. All right. Because a lot of people at that time wanted Messiah to come and let's fix things. We're going to put Israel back together. And when we've got Israel back together, well, then this is going to be the paragon of purity of everything that God wants in the world. Okay. And I guess there's nothing wrong with wanting that. I think that's what it's going to be like when Jesus comes back. But he wasn't coming to bring that kind of experience. He was coming to bring a kingdom that's in the midst of a world where there are weeds, because we've got to share with those people. You share the beauty of the new kingdom with them. So there's a sense that we have a kingdom. It's there, but it's not quite to what it's going to become. All right. There's a bit of waiting, which gets us to the next two parables, the mustard seed and the leaven. Those two parables are about something small that's going to get big. Again, there's a waiting. It might feel insignificant now. It might feel small. It might feel like 12 disciples who are hanging out with a rabbi, and it's really nothing. But it's going to become something. It's become something much, much bigger. Again, a waiting thing. You're not going to get what you're looking for right away. It's going to come over time. All right. And that kind of brings us to where we are today. So we are now in Matthew 13, verse 44. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and covered up. Then in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. So this parable is actually very different than the other ones. The other parables were kind of describing, the aspect of the kingdom of like, what are we doing in the kingdom? We're sowing seeds. We're sowing the truth. What's it going to be like? It's going to be like we're all mixed together, or we're going to be doing small things that are going to become big. This one is much more about the value of what we have in the kingdom. Okay. This is value. So you have a guy who discovers treasure in a field that's apparently available to be bought. Okay. And by the way, this is not a weird thing for people to do, to just have it, because they didn't have the same kinds of security and putting things into banks and whatnot that we do. They would stash their treasure away in places. Okay. They found like walls and stuff with like treasure hidden inside of it and stuff like that. So that would not be a very weird thing. They wouldn't hear treasure in a field and think that's a strange thing. I think we hear it and like, who's going to bury a treasure in the middle of a field, right? Well, I mean, it's kind of like the squirrels, I guess. They know where they're burying their treasure, and when winter comes, it's there. And so, but this is not a weird thing for them, okay? But somebody has long lost treasure in a field, okay, and apparently it's a lot of treasure. Okay, Jesus doesn't say, because it's not about that. So whatever the cost is for that field, it's worth it. Okay. And fields aren't exactly cheap. It's not like if any of us were to like look at a plot of land and go and buy some land, it's not like, pocket change. We are talking about a significant investment. This person probably has to give everything, right? This is what he says. He goes and sells all that he has. He is willing to become poor, essentially, for a moment, so that he can have the riches of the treasure. Okay. And so we need to make some associations with this. So Jesus is talking about this the person in the story is essentially somebody who is a potential disciple. So I got the interpretations there for us, where we've got the different parts of the parable and what they potentially mean. Okay. And I'm trying to interpret as well as I can for you. Some of these parables can go a few different ways. That's okay. We ran into that this morning a little bit. But this guy is somebody who is going to be a potential disciple for Jesus. Okay. And he then has an openness, and he discovers this treasure. Okay. Well, what is the treasure? I think to put it broadly, the treasure that we're talking about here is it's the blessings or the rewards of kind of being a part of Messiah, being in this kingdom, right? So if you're following Jesus and you're living according to his teaching, if you're counted as a disciple of Jesus, there are certain benefits that come along with this. It's a treasure to have it. Okay, it is the life as God intended for us, or at least the closest we can get this side of eternity. Okay. And I don't want to kind of discount the sort of eschatological, the eternal kind of piece of this too, because not only do you get treasure now, because we get to live the kind of the life the way God intended here, we actually get that life eternally when Jesus returns. So it's kind of broad in the sense of like, these are all of the blessings, the rewards, of life in Messiah, of life in Jesus. And it's greater than anything else that we can have in our lives. So that would be the man's possessions. This is everything. Like he's using kind of a monetary analogy, but in our lives, it's not just it's not like we buy the kingdom. We don't go in. It's like not a literal field that we're going and buying here. Although culturally, some people might think that, like, you have your membership fees and you get your benefits. It doesn't work that way. The field really is, or the man's possessions, I'm sorry, the man's possessions really is like the pursuits, the priorities, the things that we would otherwise consider to be valuable in our lives. And so we go through all of those things that would even be selfish ventures, particularly the selfish ventures. We say the treasure of being a part of God's kingdom is greater than anything else that I could pursue in my life. And I am willing to essentially lay that preferred life on the sacrificial altar. I'm willing to give up all of that so that I can have this life in Jesus. Okay, so that's and then the field. The field's kind of interesting because it's sort of like the setting for the treasure. So it's like the journey. It's you're because it's not the result, because the result is the treasure, right? In the field. So the field itself is like the pursuit of this life, because it doesn't just happen, right? Like, I've been on this journey long enough where I've learned that what I thought was the kingdom is there's way more to it than what I thought 20 years ago. Okay. And there's a lot I'm teaching this class because of it. Like, there is so much deeper in this journey than I thought. The treasure is so much more valuable than I thought. But you don't discover that unless you buy the field. You know what I'm saying? Like, you gotta be in the journey. You gotta be a part of the setting. I could even say part of that is like the church. Like, I just had a conversation today with somebody who's sort of telling me like, oh yeah, we don't need church. We don't need the people. It's really just, me and Jesus. And I clearly told him that's not the way it is, but it's kind of like the church, right? You need to have the setting. Like, we need to be together as God's people, right? And part of the treasure comes from being together with God's people, and it comes from being, receiving God's word, and it comes in times of worship, and it comes as we're out in the world and we're sowing that seed and we're living among the tares, and all of those things. It comes as we do a little thing with faith that's going to become a big thing, right? So essentially, I would say like the field could be even like all the parables that came before this one, right? He's describing the field. This is what it's like. But what you're going to get out of that is that there's going to be this treasure, and it actually takes surrendering your life for it. because that's the only way to get the field, right? Because the field is that valuable, but what you receive is greater. And so if I were to kind of like bring the meaning all together, yeah, I think it's just like the value of God's kingdom outweighs the value of everything else in our lives. Okay. And that in order to attain it, we do need to release those things. You know, I mean, Jesus will talk about how you can't have two masters, right? You have to just choose one. We have to release the other master, in a sense, to have that treasure. But there is sacrifice in that, right? And there's commitment in that. And this one, if you really spend time with it, it gets you. And the next one's just like it. Okay, these two parables go hand in hand. Okay. So maybe that's what I'll do. I'm going to take us to the next one. And yeah, let's take a look at the pearl of great value here. This is verse 45. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who, on finding one pearl of great value, went and sold all that he had and bought it. Okay. So clearly the same realm. Okay. And this is not unusual for Jesus to link parables together that have essentially the same meaning, but is using different analogies to get there. Okay, we had just a little bit earlier, we had the parable of the mustard seed, and then we had the parable of the leaven in the dough. Right, same. It's really the same message, like overall, but you tell it two different ways because it's going to catch people differently with the different analogy. Maybe one analogy kind of goes over your head, but the other one is the one that kind of sinks into your heart. And this is the purpose of these stories are not just information. It's actually there to connect to you in a very deep kind of way. Okay. So this is kind of some sort of a, some sort of a merchant of, jewels, or somebody who kind of is in that realm. And he's looking for these finds. So there's he's kind of a different thing. We didn't know with the previous story if the guy was out searching for treasure, but this one's clearly searching for fine pearls. So maybe that's a distinction between the two. Maybe the other guy just stumbled upon the treasure. That would be a little bit of a different experience, right? Maybe the first story, the guy stumbled against somebody who was a part of that field. If I'm talking about the church, right? He kind of had an encounter with the treasure and said, this treasure is greater. The other person, this is a merchant who is looking. And that is a different experience. Have you ever met somebody who was looking, who was searching, who was kind of had a desire, and maybe they didn't even know what they were looking for, but they knew they would know it when they got to it? There are lots of people out there who were on the search. This guy's searching. He's searching for fine pearls. And he found one of great value. And that's it's very interesting. If you've got somebody who is a merchant, he's going to know what kind of value it has. Okay. And often the really shrewd merchants will know the value of something is far greater than what somebody else is selling it for. Okay. This was our experience in my previous church. We would have a rummage sale. It was in support of our students who we would send to Christian schools. And so every summer there would be this long period of time where the basement of our church would get completely overrun with everybody else's junk. Okay. And it was amazing. Like we would be packed to the gills with everybody's stuff. And then we'd have to sort it all into different places. And there was a whole method to the madness. And it became a really big thing for the community, so much so that people would line up outside of the doors of our church for hours before we would open up. And it came to a point where we would even like charge people to get in for the first look at the stuff. And they would very happily give us money to just get in the building. And the people at the front of the line had a look in their eye. Okay. And this is the look in their eye of like, I know what I'm going after. I'm going to know it when I see it, and I'm going to snatch it before the person behind me. And so it was a sight to behold. The moment we would open those doors, there would be a mad rush into our basement of junk. And people would have a bag and they would just be grabbing as quickly as they could. It's because these people knew there were steals in there. Okay. And they were going after it. And that's kind of how I feel about this guy. Like, they're going to know it when they see it. And when they see it, they're going to grab it. This pearl is kind of like that. Somebody looks and says, this is it. I can tell you stories about people, even in our own church, where that's been their life experience. Their life experience is that they came along, they found Jesus, and they're like, you don't get it. This is it. Like they're talking to Christians. Like, no, this is it. You've got this. And sometimes I think those of us who've lived with it our whole lives, we're like, well, yeah, of course we do. Like, but you don't have that sort of reaction. Like, no, I've been searching for this my whole life. You don't realize this is so good. Okay. I think that's what this parable is about. This person finds the pearl and he's like, this is it. And I don't care that this is an expensive pearl. Okay. He has to sell everything that he has. Okay. And he's a merchant, so he's probably got some stuff. So he's selling everything for this pearl. It's worth it. I don't care if I don't have anything else. The value of this pearl is greater. And I'm willing to give up everything for it. So these two parables are so fantastic, aren't they? And so let's just kind of play around with the interpretation here, like the different parts of the parable. So the merchant, this is like we talked about. This is somebody who is searching. I think that's the distinction here. This is not just somebody who stumbles on it. This is somebody who's looking. This is someone who's searching for the kingdom. And the pearl clearly is the same thing as the treasure, right? This is just the benefits, the rewards of like being a part of the kingdom now and forever. Okay. Same thing, the possessions, same, that's just have the priorities, your purpose, all the things that you have in a world. And, and I guess if we're going to have like the price is then the things that you're willing to give up. It's you're willing to seek it and possess it. And then you get the benefits of it. So, and then the meaning there is that once again, the value of the kingdom just is greater than that of this world. Now, this could, if you take a good look at it, it could kind of fly in the face of some of our Lutheran theology, if you really want to kind of like twist on it a little bit, because it sure does seem like there is a cost, right? There is something that you're giving, and then there is a thing that you are receiving. Both of these analogies are highly transactional. Okay. And so I guess you could think, well, you could interpret it toward kind of a works righteousness thing where I need to do these things in order to get the good things from God. I don't think that's what these parables are there to do. But there is a cost, right? You can't take away that element of the parable. There's a cost here. And there's a famous book written by Dietrich Bonhoeffer called The Cost of Discipleship. Highly recommend it. He's really cueing in on this idea that our life in Jesus is not just gift. Okay. Now, the way we get into our life with Jesus is gift. The fact that there is a treasure, the fact that there is a pearl, that's gift. All right. Because the only way that comes is through the death and resurrection of Jesus. God sent his son so that we would have the gift. But if you want to live into that gift, if you want to truly have the fullest treasure of that gift, it takes a full commitment to the gift, which means you got to give stuff up, right? The things of this world need to go. Okay. Or you just need to reorient yourself so that the things of this world, and because there are lots of things in this world that are good. Okay. There are a lot of vocational responsibilities that we have in this life that are good. So it's like reorient yourself so that your life in the kingdom is the most important and most beautiful and most valuable thing in your life. And then everything else gets ordered by it and comes after it. It's kind of down on the list. And then anything that would be antithetical to the kingdom, well, that's just out, right? We're not doing those things. Okay. That's cut off of my life. And that's not exactly just a choice you make once, right? Like that's a life we live every day. Every day we're making choices to sell sell everything and buy the field, right? Every day, because I could take all of my old stuff back, right? In a sense, I can do that. So the cost of discipleship is allegiance to this truth, allegiance to Jesus as rabbi for us, right? That we are walking with our Messiah Jesus, as this class says, that I'm doing this every day, and rejecting the things of this world that are not a part of his teaching. So there is a cost here, and Bonhoeffer talks about costly grace, right? And I love that term, costly grace, partially because the grace that we have was costly. That's really the point that he makes, and it's really brilliant. You could even kind of think of that second parable, the one about the pearl, that way. You could kind of say, in another sense, it would sort of be a different parable, but Jesus would be the one looking for a pearl, and he finds us. And he says, I'm willing to give my life for that. Okay. And that's how that pearl, in a sense, becomes available to us. I'm mixing the metaphors, but you can kind of see that you could almost turn that parable a different way and say that Jesus is willing to give everything for us. It cost him everything. God sent his son to die. He suffered for this. All right. So there's a cost so that we can have the grace, but then we have a cost in order to truly live into it. And that's, in a way, that's kind of baked into the experience. If you're going to be a follower of Jesus, there are going to be costs. You don't get to just do it however which way you want to. And I think that's why you get to both of the parables here. They're both there together for that reason, because this is costly grace. Okay, so let's move on then, because we got some more parables. I'm going to turn a little corner here, and very interesting reprisal of a theme. This is the dragnet. This is verse 47 in Matthew 13. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea and gathered fish of every kind. When it was full, men drew it ashore and sat down and sorted the good into containers, but threw away the bad. So it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come out and separate the evil from the righteous and throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So already we can kind of get a sense that this parable is similar to that of the wheat and the tares. Okay. And I find it interesting that they're not next to each other. That's something that we can ponder maybe a little bit. But let's kind of look at this parable on its own. So it's kind of assuming some cultural knowledge of how fishing happens, okay? Um, and I got a little quote here of kind of how they would do this kind of fishing. So the dragnet is referred to metaphorically in the Gospel of Matthew when Jesus explains the kingdom of heaven. This parable exactly fits the function of the dragnet. It is spread into the sea, then dragged to the shore. In the process, all kinds of fish are caught, which the fishermen sitting on the shore sort out. The bad ones refer to the scaleless catfish forbidden by Jewish law and not even offered for sale. Okay, so what they would do is they would have this like huge long net, and then there were floats on one end of the net and then weights at the bottom, and they would drop this net down, and then there would be people on shore that would have ropes that would just pull everything in. And so if you're in the way, if you're between that drag net and the shore, unless you're a pretty swift fish, like you're getting caught in that. And so you can imagine the scene once the drag net makes it to shore, you've got fish flopping all over the place. Okay. And so then you've got to do some sorting. And as the quote has it, the sorting had to do, I mean, in their culture, the sorting would be the ones that were fit for the marketplace and others that were not fit for the marketplace. Okay. And one of the things that would make a fish unfit for the marketplace would be unclean animals, unclean fish. And there were, like I said, the scaleless fish were not the ones that they could use. So they would have to toss those back into the water. But I think here we've got a little bit of a different metaphor going on. Okay, so let's kind of maybe work our way through it. We can see it. So the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea and gathered fish of every kind. So we're talking about the kingdom of heaven here. And this is the kingdom of heaven that's going to have fish of every kind. All right. That's an important detail. The kingdom of heaven's going to have fish that are going to have some that are acceptable and others that are not. Okay. When it was full, men drew it ashore and sat down and sorted the good into containers, but threw away the bad. And so when it was full, it's kind of the fullness of time metaphor, where when time had come to a place when all of those who would be caught in the net, we're talking about people, really, we're not talking about fish, right? When all of them are there, again, people want to know when that's going to be. Good luck. No, it's when God determines that. God's going to determine when that fullness of time is. And men drew it ashore, sat down, they sorted it. So it will be at the end of the age. So now he's kind of letting it out now. So just in case you didn't know where he was going with this, so it will be at the end of the age. So it will be at the fullness of time. The angels. So he's interpreting this for us. The angels are the men. All right. The angels will come out. They're going to separate the evil from the righteous. But hey, what are we talking about here? We're talking about the kingdom of heaven. Okay. This can be a little bit rough for us, but Jesus has a number of teachings that will tell us that not everybody who claims to be a part of this is a part of this. All right. And that can be challenging for us because we may want to then be the ones to do the choosing. All right. But we're not going to be the ones doing the choosing. We're one of the fish that are flopping around. Okay. You want to be a fish that's flopping around because God's going to do the choosing. All right. You don't want to pretend to be an angel because we're not very good at that. We don't do angel jobs very well. Okay. God has his angels. They're going to be doing the sorting. It's not our job to do the sorting. And let me tell you, that is a huge temptation in the world. It's a huge temptation among church bodies. It's a huge temptation to go and say, you are all the wrong ones. Okay. And here's the challenge. There may be truth in that. All right. There may be truth in saying you're all wrong. Okay. But if we start to act as the judges, guess what else happens? We're wrong. Okay. Because clearly Jesus is teaching us not to do that. We're not supposed to be the judges. We're not supposed to be out there casting judgment on everybody else in the kingdom of heaven, saying you're all wrong and we're right. Okay. It's clearly spoken against. Okay. Now, could there be other ways? Could there be more winsome ways? Could there be ways for us to simply live the faith that we believe is the true faith and hope that the world sees it and says, wow, you've got it, and let's be a part of that? Or can there be more winsome ways to say we're going to talk and we're going to communicate, and we're going to even debate. We're going to kind of have it out a little bit and in brotherly love, and do that's all a part of this iron sharpening iron thing that Jesus is all about. He's all about us working out that kind of that salvation that we have and struggling with it even a little bit together. That's what it means to be in this great big family, right? But if we put ourselves in the position of judge, if we put ourselves in the position of I'm in and you're out, we have to be really careful because we might be out. Okay. And I'm not joking around. I really feel like that's one of the greatest sins of the Christian church in the last 500 years. And probably longer than that, but I definitely in the last 500 years, right? I love Martin Luther. I love what he gave us, but in some ways, what he started became a contagion, and it got really out of hand. And then we all decided that we're just going to ignore this parable and the one earlier about the weeds, right? Because it's very sad because it really, really weakens the church. We put ourselves into a position that was never intended to be ours. So this is a very, very important parable for our day. And if it feels like I'm a bit passionate about it, it's because I am. It really is important. So, all right, so let's do a little bit of interpreting here with this dragnet. The dragnet is the kingdom of heaven. That's what makes this parable so difficult for us, right? The kingdom is going to bring in all sorts of people. The lake is the world. So in the world, God is catching people. God is catching people, all sorts of people. And then we get to the fishermen. These are the ones who are doing the sorting. And this is the angels at the end when we get to that time, the angels who are going to do the sorting. And then the kosher fish, and yes, I put kosher there because that would have been the understanding of the people of that day, that they're going to be sorting out the kosher fish from the unclean fish. And the kosher fish are going to be the righteous, and the unclean fish are going to be the wicked. And that's clearly also just right there in the interpretation that Jesus gives us. And then, I mean, we can ask some questions about what does it mean to be righteous? What does it mean to be wicked? And I think the other parables are kind of giving that to us, right? I mean, did you buy the field? Right? Like, that's kind of part of the question. Like, I think that's why we're getting these other parables. Did you sow some seed? Did you do a little thing? Right? Because God can make those little things big things, but you still got to do some little things, right? So did you participate in the kingdom? Did you do the things that people in the kingdom are supposed to do? I think that's part of it. And and if you kind of look at where the parable of the weeds is, maybe like turn back just a little bit, that parable of the weeds. So in verse 24 and following, we get the parable about the mustard seed and the leaven. The little things become big things, right? We get the hidden treasure. We get the pearl of great value, right? We get this net. So maybe there's a little bit of a message in there, even in the book ending, of like, what does it mean to be somebody who is righteous? And again, is this a works righteousness? I don't think so. I think this is just being who God's made you to be, right? This is just us being Christians. And I don't think it's too much to ask. I think it's what the whole thing is about. So yeah, I think that's what it means to be righteous and wicked. And then throwing the bad fish away is very interesting. So, because I mean, now I'm like envisioning like in the parable, like you've got the fish that don't like just tossing them back, right? You're just tossing them back. You're not leaving them on the shore. That would be cruel. But I mean, the previous, but in the parable, we get like there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So I guess that lake's not a great place to be. You don't want to be left in the lake, right? There's another analogy for that we get in Revelation, and that lake isn't so watery. It's kind of hot. So you don't want to be thrown back into the lake. That's not where we want to be. We want to be caught in that net, and we want to be kept. That's the point. Yeah. So this is a really powerful parable, and one that I just think we need to take heed in huge ways. And you know what? The other thing this does, and I do want to speak to this, is that what it also means, because like if you think about where we are now, we're in the net and it's being pulled ashore. Okay, because that's where we are. Because we're not to the shore yet. We're caught in the net. Right? In the parable, we're caught in the net. It's being pulled ashore, like it's coming, but the time has not come for the sorting. So we're in the water still. We're still in the world, but we're in the net, which is the kingdom. But we're also in this net with all sorts of other people, all sorts of other fish that they're not looking like the kingdom fish, you know? So that's our setting right now. All right. Which means it's messy. What we do is messy. Okay. And I know there is a desire for everything to be clean and everything to be pure. And there's nothing wrong with having that desire. Okay. Every time that we together as brothers and sisters in Christ can do a few things together and have harmony and work together and do cool things that are like awesome together, this just feels so good. Like in my work, that's the dream that we get to do awesome things together and we just cooperate well together and care for each other. And, you know, and every once in a while I get to hear awesome stories about that happening. And it just warms my heart. And it's like, yes, thank you, God. Okay. Of course we want that, but we're not living in the age where everybody's there yet. Okay. So Jesus is just giving us fair warning ahead of time, twice in two different parables, to say, you're going to be in this world. You're going to be in the kingdom of heaven with a whole lot of people who aren't going to act like they're a part of the kingdom of heaven. So what are you going to do, Christians? What are you going to do? Okay. Those are the choices we make in moments like that are crucial. Okay. They are crucial. And that's right in the moment like that when we need to run right back to Jesus and say, Jesus, what is your instruction for us? How do you want us to live? Okay. What kind of compassion, what kind of truth telling, what kind of love should we have for our brothers and sisters in Christ who don't seem to be living that way? Okay. Or maybe believing just lies. That's also a very, very real thing. So that is it. And trust me, there's no easy answers there, just in case you thought I was like, I'm holding out on like the magic bullet of like how this is supposed to work. I don't know. You got to do it every day. And every situation is going to be a little different. So sorry. We got to figure it out as we go. But Jesus tells us. So that's the beautiful thing. All right. Another parable. Let's keep it going. This is verse 51. I love the way this one starts. Have you understood all these things? They said to him, yes. Now, I really hope that's true, by the way. I hope that they're like, I kind of feel like that's like, have you ever had this situation? Maybe because I teach a lot, I get this, because one of my little ticks when I use when I'm speaking, and I'm sure it gets annoying to you because every one of those, instead of ums or your nose, I'll use the word right. and that's all out of like am I connecting? Are you actually hearing what I'm saying? Like, because as a teacher, I do kind of want you to get it. I like, the information to get from point A to point B. And so it's sort of a situation where if I were to be saying like, hey, do you guys understand that? In your heart, you could be saying, absolutely not. But like, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm not going to make waves. What did he say? That I kind of have that feeling. I don't know. Maybe they got it. Maybe they are like completely hanging with Jesus. Okay, that's a real possibility because earlier he did say, you are blessed because you do have eyes to see and you do have ears to hear. So maybe they're getting it. Okay. I kind of want to hope they're getting it. But there is a piece of me that wonders if this is a little bit of comic relief. So I don't know. It could go either way. But the parable comes after that, verse 52. And he said to them, therefore, every scribe who has been trained for the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who brings out of his treasure what is new and what is old. Okay. Now this is really an interesting kind of little take here. So the kingdom is like a scribe. Okay. So scribes. So let's talk about scribes. So a scribe in their culture was pretty much the smartest guy in the room. Okay. This was the one who was extremely well studied, would have the ability to do copying of the different manuscripts and things that were happening. Often they were lawyers, so they had a sense of the Jewish law, not just lawyers and just civil law, but like the Jewish, the Torah, and they were. And they didn't have the same role as like a rabbi in the sense of having disciples and whatnot. They were kind of the scholars. Okay, they were the ones you'd go to with your big question. Okay, encyclopedic knowledge, stuff like that. Okay, so scribes were very, very highly revered in their culture. Okay. And many of them were just as, if you're talking the corrupt religious establishments, many of them were just as corrupt as the rest of them. Okay. So just so that like, it's not like they were all fantastic, but they were highly respected for their knowledge. Okay. So, but this is a scribe. Notice the qualification, a scribe who has been trained for the kingdom of heaven. Okay. So this is somebody who has that same kind of knowledge, but this is a knowledge for the sake of what Jesus is bringing. Okay. Jesus is bringing this kingdom. We have Messiah now. And what is this like? It's like a master of a house who brings out of his treasure, there's that word again, what is new and what is old. Oh, and then he gives us nothing else. Right? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? What is new and what is old? It could be anything. You bought something new, you got something old, right? We get a little bit of help here from a similar text that shows up in the Talmud. Okay, and the Talmud is a Jewish writing that's going to come, some 200 some years later after Jesus. But there's a remarkable kind of parallel in this passage that I think helps us. So Rabbi Hesida asked one of the young rabbis, do you know the difference between new and old? All right. The new, he replied, are the minor commandments, and the old are the major commandments. And Rabbi Hesida retorted, Then was the Torah given at two different times? Rather, the old are the words of the Torah, while the new are those derived from the words of the sages. Okay. This is actually really helpful for us in understanding what Jesus is talking about. This is not the new and the old aren't sort of saying minor, major, things that are lesser and greater, but really the old, these are the words of the Torah. This is the words of the scriptures. But the new, these are the interpretations of the scriptures. And those, you can kind of see what Jesus is doing. He's going to bring out an old treasure. And that old treasure is the same Torah you've always had. And it's beautiful. But the new treasure is that you have Jesus who has given you the proper interpretation of that Torah that then brings about this kingdom. Okay. And this is a scribe who's been trained for that kingdom, right? So he understands not only the Torah, but he also understands this interpretation that Jesus has of the Torah that then gathers together this kingdom people, okay? Which in some ways really kind of sets us up for the Bible that we have, right? Even the way it's referred to is kind of embedded in this phrase, isn't it? You got an Old Testament, okay, an old witness, and a new witness. And the old witness is not old because it's outdated and it's just not just a historical volume, right? It's a treasure. It's a treasure. We have to understand it as a treasure. But we also have a new treasure. And the new treasure is the interpretation of it by and even the way that puts it, from the words of the sages. That's straight out of the Talmud. Well, who's a greater sage do we have than Jesus himself, right? God showed up on the earth as the greatest sage, and he has given us the interpretation of the Torah. And of course, then through his death and resurrection brings that to the world. It's pretty significant. So it's a pretty, I don't know. I think this is kind of a neat understanding that Jesus is saying that, and he's saying it to these disciples, because remember what his question was before. Do you understand all these things? Because the implication here is that because this is the new treasure, I'm giving you the new treasure. And you already have the old treasure. You are being trained into the kingdom so that you can have this new treasure and share it with everybody else. Okay. I love this. I love this because it doesn't throw out the old. It is building on the old. So I think we pretty much have that interpretation, right? So the owner of the house is a teacher of the Torah who is a disciple of the kingdom of heaven, right? So this is somebody who understands the Old Testament, but is also trained in the ways of Jesus. And then, the old treasure is the Torah, the Hebrew scriptures. I mean, we can go all the way through what we would call the Old Testament, and the new one would be the messianic interpretation of that. I don't know if the gospel writers have in mind a New Testament per se that we have. There was no such thing when they were writing this. Clearly Jesus knows it's going to come, but I'm not quite sure if we could put New Testament in there per se, but certainly the interpretation of the Torah that is given to us by Jesus, that's definitely in play there. And so the meaning of that would be that somebody who knows Torah and has become a disciple of the kingdom, he's kind of got double treasure. You got the old treasure and the new treasure. Let's bring it all out. And of course, what does Paul end up doing when he goes to all of these synagogues all around the known world, right? He's bringing out the old treasure, and then he says, and now here's the new treasure from Jesus. And when you put both of those together, you have a lot of people who are saying, that's a lot of treasure. I think I want to buy that field, So that's I think what's going on here is that he's even giving them, this is the means by which you're going to then bring this gospel message to the lost sheep of Israel. Because remember, the disciples, they're going to be going after the lost sheep of Israel. It's going to be others who go beyond that. So, all right, one more little bit here, just on the flip side of your page, and then we'll this is just a brief little thing, but I think it's kind of cool. Because as we've been spending time in these parables, the Gospel of Mark has a very similar passage as what we had earlier in Matthew. This is in Mark 4, verse 33. With many such parables, Jesus spoke the word to them, and as they were able to hear it. And he did not speak to them without a parable, but privately to his own disciples, he explained everything. Okay, so this is where he talks about, it says that Jesus is speaking in parables, and usually when he was like in large groups and whatnot, he would speak in parables. But if he had a private moment with the disciples, he would explain to them in different terms the teaching of the parables. And it's actually consistent with two different types of teaching that we have in the Jewish literature and the way that they understand the different teachings that they receive from God. And that is halakha and agadah, okay? And those two words sound kind of similar, but they're very, very different. Halakha is it comes from the word halak in the Hebrew, which means to walk. Okay. And these were the teachings that were more didactic. They were more kind of straightforward. Here are the things that we do and here are the things we don't do. And they were much more of the interpretation of how do we do this in our world today? All right. So you would have rabbis in every place who was looking at the culture and looking at the things that are going on in the world, looking at the Torah and saying, everybody, we need to be doing this, but we shouldn't be doing that. And those things weren't necessarily in the Torah, but based upon an interpretation of the world around them, this would be the faithful way of doing that. Now, Jesus, of course, runs into problems with that, because if you make enough of that and you love that a whole lot, it can become a problem. But we do this kind of thing too, right? We have policy manuals. One of the best parts of my job, policies, right? So, but those are so important because we have to make decisions about how we do things and how we treat people and things like that. And not everything in those policies are coming from, straight out of the Bible. I would hope they're consistent with it, but not everything is coming out of the Bible. What is agadah? Agadah is, it comes from the word that kind of gives us a narrative. It's a story. If you put an H in front of that, Haggadah, that's the portion of the Seder where they tell the story of the Israelite people coming out of captivity into toward the Promised Land, okay, passing through the Red Sea. So the Haggadah is the story. The Agadah is the story. And this was the kind of teaching where you would tell stories. This is the parables, stories that then capture the meaning of something, and that would be what you hold on to, and there would be teaching within that story. You might even have ways to walk within that story, but it's put into the form of a story. And so in some ways you can kind of understand Jesus is out in public and he's doing Agadah, right? He's telling all these stories. He's telling all these stories, and the meaning of that story is what he wants to teach. He wants that. But the disciples are going to have to go behind some closed doors and say, give me some halakha. Okay, just tell me what you said. I want to make sure I don't miss it. All right. And so it kind of loses the story form and just becomes kind of, here are the things. And we do see that where Jesus will take the disciples behind the scenes and say, all right, let me interpret this for you. This is what I actually meant by that. Okay. So when you're looking at Jesus' teachings, you can even kind of ask yourself, which kind of teaching am I looking at? Am I looking at a teaching that is just more straightforward and plain? And sometimes the disciples will ask Jesus for that. Can you just tell us plainly? Can we just not have a story this time? Or other times is these big stories that are like, some of them are very complex and have lots of different kind of interpretations and meanings to them. So, okay. So I just want to kind of get that in there. When we come back next week, we're going to have a storm, and it's going to be very, very interesting. And then it'll be even more interesting when Jesus lands the boat. So that'll finish us up for today. Let's have a prayer and ask God to bless the things that we've learned. Father in heaven, thank you so much for these amazing teachings from Jesus. Thank you for showing us the kingdom in those stories. And thank you for giving us eyes to see and ears to hear, that we hear these stories and they touch our hearts. They give us guidance for this life. They give us correction where we have strayed. It teaches us the value of what you have given to us in Jesus. Imprint these stories on our hearts so that we will carry them with us wherever we go, and that we can be guided to be the kind of people you call us to be through Jesus. It's in his name we pray. Amen.